unfortunately no one from RAP was able to be here today, but we were really keen that we still maintain something on the agenda about the Rural Community Energy Fund. So I think hopefully it's going to be of use for a lot of people that are here and a lot of the other people we deal with. It does mean that we won't be able to go into quite the level of detail that we hoped. I'm not an expert specifically in the fund itself, but have been brought up to speed. So I'm here to give sort of a rough overview. I know that James is then going to go into some more details.
Could you speak up a bit, please?
Yeah, of course. Sorry, Charmaine. David and the team at RAP will be very keen in their details at the end to take on any individual questions and to deal with people directly, and that's their role, to be quite supportive and help people who are looking into this fund to actually work out how they can make it of use. Okay, so the Rural Community Energy Fund, many of you may have heard of it previously, and it was launched in June of this year. It's designed in two parts and comes from 15 million pot from DEC and from DEFRA. DEC are primarily interested in looking at how they can support community generation as part of the community energy strategy that's ongoing at the moment, and also looking at the 15% renewables target. From DEFRA's point of view, their focus has really been about looking at how within communities it can increase investment, increase jobs, and looking at the social and economic benefits. So the important bit, what is available? The Rural Community Energy Fund is actually in two parts, the first part of which is a grant and the second part of which is a loan. Stage one is a grant of £20,000 for organisations, and I'll go into a bit more detail in Dave's presentation as to who can apply and for what technologies shortly. But it's a £20,000 maximum grant, and that is designed to help people who are looking at a community generation project to go through the initial stages. So looking at things like the initial community assessment, trying to get people on board, looking at the very initial feasibility, and that is money that doesn't have to be repaid. The second stage is a loan of up to £130,000, so taking the total to 150, and that's more for full planning consent, so for looking at all of the things that was touched on in the presentation previously that you'll need in order to be successful. Just to note, RAP are quite realistic in terms of the timescale, so one of the things that the fund has is effectively a rolling element because of the loan. There's also, thankfully, as some of the other funds don't have, no very kind of forced and fixed early deadline for people to get applications in. But this is very much people doing this at their own speed, doing exactly what you said, having everything in place in order to ensure that they're ready to do so. And they're looking at people taking several years. They're looking at a 6-year agreement potentially. The loan itself, there is interest that's repayable on that, but not during the course of the loan. It's a premium at the end, which I'll touch on again a little bit later. So who can apply? In my head, this is split into almost two groups based around where the community is. So you do have to be a legally registered organisation, and obviously that helps with things like the business planning, the accounts, etc. that is touched on shortly. Parish councils, community interest companies and co-ops are the ones who, for me, will be looking at their own developments in their own area, their own communities. There are also other options for charities, the local authority, development trusts, faith groups and RSLs to work with the local community to actually facilitate this grant. It's really, really imperative across the board that the local community, the applicant community as RAP terms it, are supportive and involved, whether that's you as your own community or whether that's you working with someone like the local authority in order to facilitate an application. The good news is the rural parts of the Rural Community Energy Fund actually applies to all of Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. So whereas in other parts of the country it is slightly trickier to work out exactly where is eligible, I've spoken to RAP and hopefully everyone in this room that's working and looking at this could potentially benefit, which is a really positive thing to be able to say in a meeting like this. And the technology list is also quite inclusive. In terms of the technologies, it's everything that you would expect in terms of wind and hydro and PV, but also there is renewable heat as part of it. There's the focus on looking at biomass and anaerobic digestion, and also one that I think is definitely going to have to pick up separately. But there's a real interest in looking at renewable heat network and trying to look at if there's more option to expand renewable heat into the wider community, and I know that's something more widely that's of interest to Cornwall. In terms of the size of the projects, the feedback back from RAP is that there's no official minimum or maximum size. They're definitely not looking for one individual small-scale building with PV on the roof. However, they're looking for people to be ambitious, but they're also not going to discount things at this stage. So I would say that very much it's a case of taking your ideas to them, being collaborative and looking for their advice in terms of how you might be able to make that best fit. But there certainly seems to be an element of discretion at this stage as to what they will and won't look at. That's certainly the line that I've been given. As I was just saying, the scale of the project there, in terms of the types of groups here, I've been in Cornwall for about a year now and know from working with some of the people in the room that this could potentially be a very small-scale community project, and there are other communities like in Weybridge who are looking at a much larger scale development. All of this seems to fit quite nicely within RAP's plans for the Rural Community Energy Fund. In terms of professional support, it's something that RAP has been quite vocal about, the need to have really good quality professional support. They don't provide their own consultants for this. They are looking for people who are applying to take on their own consultants and their own expertise, which they're looking to vet. So the exact nature of that process, again, I think has some discretion to it, but they're keen that people are finding the best expertise possible, local expertise where that is feasible. But they're also very strongly advocating investing in that expertise up front in terms of saving time and money later on in the process. They've also said that people need to be very realistic about the hurdles, and I know some of the earlier presentations touched on this in a lot more detail. One of the things that they're quite keen that people understand is the difficulties that can come from getting your own local community support, particularly if you're looking at coming in from a wider angle. Also making sure that you have the right people on your side in terms of consultants to help you overcome those obstacles, planning and wider support from people like the parish council. And I know firsthand that a lot of the people in this room have had difficulties with their own projects over the last 12 months in overcoming those hurdles. So it's nice to know that this fund has actually been thought about in a way that understands that these hurdles will come up. This might be a lengthy process and is not trying to put any extra hurdles in your way. As I mentioned, what is covered? So stage one, and I apologise, this is a bit of a rough summary, is the expertise required for you as a community group, community interest company, co-op, to actually develop your initial feasibility report. So that will cover finding a site, securing the site, any initial planning consultations in your public consultation, and also potentially some outline financial modelling. In terms of stage two, that really is what it says on the tin up there, that is the much wider looking at planning, the technical and feasibility aspects, putting in a full planning application. So the application process, as I mentioned, on the RAP website, which will come up at the end, there's a complete application pack which covers both stage one and stage two, so separately for the grant element and the loan element. The one point which I've taken away and cleared with RAP was, as I touched on earlier in the presentation, the interest. So there is a 45% premium that is repayable on the loan at the time of refinancing. So the grant is definitely not repayable. Should your project be successful and you refinance and take that forward, there is a 45% premium on your up to £130,000 loan that you've taken. It is payable at that point. However, RAP are keen to stress that this is based, I know I was a little bit shocked myself that it was so high, but they're very keen to stress that if there are genuine reasons, whether that be planning issues, that the application isn't taken forward and the project cannot proceed, that isn't going to be enforced. So you'll need to speak on your own specific requirements with RAP, but I was very concerned as well that may leave people in a difficult position, and I've been assured.
So what's the actual trigger for repayment?
Trigger for repayment is when the project is successful and takes on further finance and investment.
Goes to construction finance at that
absolutely.
Point.
So the idea is that 45% premium is built into your refinancing or investment package and then can be repaid from there. And I think obviously there is funding available, but they're wanting it to be recycled where possible. So the aim of the loan in Cornwall is that will go on, the repayment will come in and will allow facilitation of other projects going forward. The period? It will be 150 in total. I think each is up for agreement. The figures that RAP feedback I've given me is that they're looking at a 6-year contract. So it would be a 6-year contract. That's in terms of right from taking the initial to going through, that's what they would expect.
Abbie, during the development of this, there was some talk around, after that initial feasibility study has been completed and you're then moving into the more detailed planning, consents, options and all the detail, that there would be a sort of milestone process that they would release a bit of money on achievement of the next milestone, so you didn't have 130 from day one, but that you would have a stage payment as you achieved various things. So once the planning permission had been in place, then more would be released. I haven't heard anything subsequent to clarify that.
I haven't either. So unfortunately that is one that we need to take away to David, and I'm happy to personally take away any questions and feedback from the group as a whole, and so the team's details will come up at the end. But that was alluded to when the fund came out initially, but again with the details that I've had, I haven't been able to get an answer on that item, I'm afraid, so sorry to not be able to clarify. This is the most important bit of the presentation. David, Llewellyn and Mark will be really, really keen to speak to anybody individually. Having dealt with them before, they're really very helpful and very knowledgeable on the ins and outs, not just of this, but the fund as a whole. They have a generic email address, and I also have contact numbers which aren't in the presentation here if anyone would like to speak to them directly. But I'm happy after Jake's speak. If we can help with any questions, then we absolutely will. Otherwise, I'm really happy to catch up with people at lunchtime or networking later and take away any questions directly if they want to ask them or people to come.
Right.